Welcome, everyone. I know some folks are trickling in, but if you settle down, we'll get moving. Great crowd here tonight. Thanks for coming out. Welcome. My name is Josh Owen, and I am the Vignelli Distinguished Professor of Design, the Director of the Vignelli Center for Design Studies. Tonight marks the third and final event of our Fall 24 Vignelli Design Conversations series, presented by Design Milk and RIT's Magic Center, and made possible in part by the generosity of RIT alumnus Chris Bailey and Bailey Brand Consulting. I'd like to begin by offering my thanks to RIT's Magic Center and their team of faculty, staff, and students, as well as our interpreters for this evening, Tiffany Taylor Contreras and Carlton Manganon for their work. I would also like to recognize the contributions of graphic design student Hannah Nedikaden for her beautiful branding for tonight's lecture, as well as this series overall this year. Rochester Institute of Technology's Vignelli Center for Design Studies is an international hub for education, research, collaboration, and advocacy, which expands the scope of the programs in the College of Art and Design's School of Design. The facility houses the archive of renowned designers Lella and Massimo Vignelli, whose works are icons of international design. The center and archive sit within RIT's College of Art and Design, which was built on the traditional territory of the Onondaga, or people of the Great Hill. In English, they are known as Seneca people, the keepers of the Western Door. They are one of the 6 sovereign nations that make up the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. We honor this land on which RIT was built and recognize the unique relationship that the indigenous stewards have with this land. That relationship is the core of their traditions, cultures, and histories. We recognize the history of genocide, colonization, and assimilation of indigenous people that took place on this land. Mindful of these histories, we work towards understanding, acknowledging, and reconciling. As stewards of history and content, we must acknowledge and seek to learn from our context, bad, good, ugly, and beautiful. This applies to the Vignelli Center as with any working archive. The Vignellis taught us that design is a systematic and scalable framework for solving problems large and small. Their philosophy, design is one, leaves us with a universal message that design is a lens through which we can envision a more inclusive and sustainable tomorrow. Before introducing our guest tonight, I have a special announcement, one that I'm deeply proud to share. For the first time in the 14-year history of the Vignelli Center, we have an RIT Vignelli Club being formed. Because the nature of these organizations must come directly from interest among our students, this marks an important acknowledgement that our students would like to expand their connections to the Vignelli Center to further harness it as a laboratory for their own success. So I'd like to invite up to the lectern 2 of the founding members of this emergent student club, Adrian Stathgaden and Derek Shedleski. Come on up, guys. I'm going to play your short video for you.
What is modern style? When the moment it becomes a style, it's not modern anymore. You know, modern has no style. Modern is not style. Modern is a discipline. Modern is an attitude. It's a way of being.
Hi everyone. My name is Adrian Stadhagen. I'm a 4th year industrial design student, and I'm excited to introduce to you all today the Vignelli Center Student Club. This club is still very much in its early stages, but it was created to support the mission of the Vignelli Center here at RIT. This organization will provide a mechanism for student engagement and kind of help spread the philosophy of the Vignelli Center through RIT and maybe even beyond that. And our mission as an organization is to aid the growth of the design community here at RIT again, that the Vignelli Center inspires so much.
Hi everyone, I'm Derek Shidleski. I'm a second-year industrial design student. With this club, me and Adrian aim to outreach to as many students as possible and create a very diverse club with as many participants from as many different fields as possible. Currently, we have involvement from design students, soy students, engineers, and business students. Working in concert with the center, we as students have the ability and the passion to continue the legacy that Lele and Massimo left in this world. We are so excited to present this club to the community, and we encourage all of you to join the cause. Me and Adrian will be around after the lecture if you are interested, and in the words of the Vignellis, help us fight against the ugliness.
Super exciting. Let's give these guys another hand of applause. Okay, our esteemed guests tonight are celebrating their third visit to RIT. Their first was as part of the historic 2002 inaugural Thought at Work conference. The second, by invitation from the Vignelli Center to be part of our 2015 Design Conversations lecture series. They are regulars at the Vignelli Center and Meta Project annual events held in New York City's Design Weeks, and I feel privileged to call them both colleagues and friends of many years. Antenna Design was founded in 1997 by Masamichi Udagawa and Sigi Moeslinger. Antenna's people-centered design work spans physical and digital spaces, considering object, interface, and environment together. When addressing complex problems such as technological change and the transformation of culture, public and private organizations value Antenna's vision and approach, which is rooted in the belief that design is about shaping people's behavior. In the public space, Antenna has extensive experience ranging from the design of New York City and Washington, D.C. subway cars to information kiosks and ticket vending machines. On the commercial side, Antenna works with corporations to help them identify and design new products and services. Antenna has won numerous awards, including the National Design Award in Product Design from the Cooper Hewitt National Design Museum. Antenna's Help Point Intercom for the New York MTA is included in the permanent collection of the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Partners in life and in work, Antenna have come to both receive and transmit the signals of good design. Please join me in offering a warm Vignelli Center welcome to Sigi Moeslinger and Masamichi Udagawa.
Thank you, Josh, for this nice introduction, and also thank you for inviting us to be back here. Each time we come, something has changed, and we've seen today we've had a nice tour of all the new facilities, and we are very impressed. And you guys are very fortunate that you can spend a few years here and pursue your dreams.
Thank you for having us here. My name is Masamichi. Sigi. As Josh said, we started a small design studio in New York City in '97, which is astonishingly 27 years ago, and many of you might have not been born yet. So it will be a little bit of the history of maybe the technology, and but we'd like to share with you what we've been thinking about and worked on through some of the projects, focusing on the public space where we feel very passionate about from the beginning of our career to this date.
We have a small studio in New York City, And as Josh already hinted at, we do a quite wide variety of work from interface design, digital interface design, physical interface design, the electronic equipment, medical equipment, furniture, environmental design, and design for public space. And as Masamichi just mentioned, today we'd like to talk a little bit more about our work in public space and how we think about it, and what has sort of crystallized over the years working in this realm.
Okay. We've been a bit like a jack of all trades, been working on many things, but then in retrospect, thinking through what we've been doing is trying to use design to affect people's behavior. And in that context, we started understanding all design being interaction design. It's all about designing this intangible thing that's happening between things. That's interaction design. And what causes interaction design is what we call the intervention that is manifested by what we design as artifact. So whatever we do, objects, screen interface, or protocols, these are all design artifacts, work as intervention. Why intervention? Because we have our lives perfectly okay, maybe not perfect, but it's okay, we've been living here. But by definition, whatever we design is something new that needs to find a place in the existing world. So naturally, it is the intervention into our existing lives. And that intervention causes interaction. That meant to change the people's behavior in certain direction. Certain direction, that is the purpose of design. We design things in order to cause something we want to cause. And
Then with a series of appropriate cues that resonate with people's mind, meaning something that's already in people's minds, therefore they can understand it and respond to it. Artifacts encourage people to make certain activities happen.
so again, we are not able to impose anything upon people. We have to take advantage of what's already in people's head and take advantage of that to guide people for new behavior, hopefully.
And especially in public space, things that we design are for multiple audiences, they are shared, and therefore they need to also manage a little bit or mediate the relationship amongst different people. And again, that makes interaction amongst people a key factor of the design. So with that, we'd like to show some applied examples, and we'd like to start with public transit, which one big aspect about public transit is it is designed for everyone.
And then, as I mentioned a bit earlier, a little bit of time machine. Back in '99, that was our first project in New York City. We have never done anything for public space at that time. So it was a great learning experience and a very, maybe most memorable project for us. And also maybe it was pivotal in the public space or in the station space where digital design came in the first time. So I don't know, maybe some of you might have visited New York in the past and have seen this machine. It's a ticket vending machine to ride New York City subway. And it was introduced in '99 and was first touch screen object in a public space in New York. Touchscreen nowadays, no one questions what it does. You know, since introduction of iPhone in 2007, it became very much everyone's in the pocket. But back then, it was new, at least in the New York City subway riders context. So we had to tell people how to use the touch screen. That was kind of a challenging thing. Also, back then, there are not too many public machines out. If there are some, they are mostly broken or extremely dirty. You don't want to touch it. So how can we use a design to encourage people to overcome their skepticism toward the public machine to use our new machine? So then we had to use multiple things. One thing was, as Sigi mentioned, that interaction design has to resonate with what's already in people's mind. Ticket vending machine is a fairly simple thing, but it involves certain interactions, new interaction for them, and it's basically replacing what they have been doing without this new machine to buy the ticket. One way to buy something from the machine back then was like buying soda, Coca-Cola from the machine. What do you do with the Coke machine? First thing you do is to put money in the machine, and then you pick the product. Everyone knows how to do it, but the problem was lots of machines in New York City back then were broken. So first thing you do, which is to put the money into the machine, then nothing happens. So that's not really a great example, even though people know that it's implicit instruction. Second way to buy something is a bit more traditional, at the store. You go into the store, what do? You don't pay up front at the store clerk. You first check the product, you check the price, and you build the confidence, and then bring the product to the clerk and pay. So payment comes at the end. So we have these two different so-called conceptual models for the transaction, and both of them are in people's mind. We could take advantage of, but which one will be appropriate for New York City? And then we did prototyping, we did the testing with a bunch of people, and then, not surprisingly, unanimously, people hated the Coke machine model because they really didn't like their money getting eaten and nothing happens. So we went for the store model, and that led our interface development.
So the screen, and by the way, the machine is still in use till today, even though they've been trying to phase it out for many years, but it's still there. And without very little change, even to the interface, it's more or less the same as what you see here. So the interface mimics a human dialogue. There's one question per screen, just like when we have a conversation. I don't ask 10 questions at once and then wait for you to respond, because that will require way too much upfront thinking and decision making. So one question, and you can very quickly move to the next screen. So we have in total more screens, but each screen is so easy to grasp that you can go through the transaction very quickly. And also, if I step back one slide, you can see these sort of basic colors on the physical interface. And why we did that was because the machine, the internal component layout was kind of scattered, and we couldn't change that. So in order to try to group the various physical interface elements and then connect.
Maybe light can come down a bit, I guess, on the screen.
Yeah, it's
Maybe I didn't do something. it's good to see the color. So.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there you go. All right, so we are talking about the color coding.
Yeah. So the colors for the physical interface elements are mirrored on the screen. So when you have to deal with cache, it's green, and then the instruction banner is also green. So like this, it helps you find where you have to, when you go back and forth, where you have to go.
Yeah, and what's really important to think about in public space is it's very different from when you are interacting with your computer or at home or your phone. It's your device, you can take your time to do whatever you want. But in public space, in a crowded station, in peak time, there are people behind you just breathing down on your shoulder or neck, and you get sort of anxiety. So interface design, interaction design has to be extra easy. That was something we had to learn. So you can see the typography is super big, super contrast, and easy to go through. The other thing is on the upper left corner, there's extra screen to guide people how to touch the screen. Again, it's kind of stupid thing now, almost, to think about, but back then it wasn't obvious.
Yeah, a lot of people were so unfamiliar with the touch screen. The only screen that they knew was a TV, and you don't touch your TV. So we went through various iterations of trying to get people to touch the screen, and I mean this is sort of first we had instruction outside of the screen and people wouldn't read it. Then we put the instruction on the screen and said touch screen to begin, and then some more people understood that. But then we added a button. And even though you can actually touch anywhere on the screen, by putting a very specific target, it made it even clearer to people that, oh, this is the button I have to touch. And then, as a last thing, this hand is actually animated and points to the button. So by that time, we finally got pretty much everyone to understand what...
Again, it's very important for the public space to make one thing for everyone. So we have to make sure that.
Yeah. So then that project led to more work with the MTA. They then asked us if we want to, or if we couldn't design their next generation of subway cars. And we had never designed subway cars, and we said, yes, of course, great. So,
but I think there's something about sort of applicability about design process or attitude, as Massimo mentioned, or the thinking that transcend to different scale or different medium. So we got like engaged with the train design, and then as you might have known if you have used the New York City subway, it's really bare because there are lots of issues with public, in the public. They eat, drink, and spill things, and then litters. So it has to be extremely easy to clean and hard to
safe is the most important thing.
Yeah. And safety is the most important thing. And we were working with the New York Police Department, and which we didn't know, but they mentioned to us that occasionally, not always, as the train pulls into the station and the door opens, and then, okay, here's a door, and someone standing on the platform reaches in and grabs handbag or necklace, or simply just attack the passenger sitting on the chair right by the door. So please provide some kind of protection for the passenger. So we went through the thinking, and the first thing we proposed was pretty obvious: the bulletproof glass, indestructible, and it's clear, so you can still see through. Not much visual impact, but it turns out back then there's an emerging vandalism style called scratchiti. Graffiti was luckily almost gone by the time we got involved. But this new thing, scratchiti, they use knives, hard tools to scratch the profanities and other things on whatever the surface they can find. So if you provide a large, clean, pristine, bulletproof glass surface, it becomes perfect canvas for them. So that was next. And then we came up with, okay, it has to be the stainless steel bars that's indestructible. And originally we put it horizontally like this. And actually, in fact, the Masamichi and Leila had their test train running before our train, which had such arrangement. But then they thought, well, it does a job, but it looks like something else. It looks like leather. And if something looks like leather, then people will use it as leather, especially kids who are not too inhibited from social conventions. And that's a little bit problematic because they may fall during the operation and they get injured or something, and that's not really good. So just simply we made it diagonal, not for the stylistic reason, but to change the message, change the communication of the object. Just simply making it diagonal, it doesn't become immediately look like ladder. You can still climb up physically, nothing prohibits that, but it doesn't send invitation, which ladder has. So that's a kind of communication design that you have to take care of, as well as the physical design.
So then that was our first train which started running in 2000. And since 2000 we have done all the new trains that came into service. Each time there was a new order that we had the opportunity to make some further improvements and changes. For example, at one point we were able to do this digital strip map, which again it's very important in New York because we have local express and local service and express service, and very often there are service changes. And when you are on a train and you don't know where you are really going or where the train is going, it makes you anxious. It makes your riding experience unpleasant, and it often can also result in people becoming aggressive towards the train. So having something that can be updated in real time while the train is running assures you that you understand where you're going and that you are in control of your ride. And this is actually a picture of the mock-up of the latest train we did for MTA. This went into service last year, the real thing, not the mock-up. But we made a full-scale mock-up for customer research and outreach. So the mock-up was displayed for several weeks, and the public could come and walk through it, fill out questionnaires, give their comments.
Sandwiches inside.
Yeah, there were also a number of moderated focus groups with the researcher, with special user groups, such as people who are bound to a wheelchair. So we were able to get a lot of feedback, and this design happened still before the pandemic, and
one of the main objectives for us for this design is to make the passenger flow much faster and smoother. The MTA was facing the challenge of rising ridership again the pre-pandemic. Now it's going back up. That's a good thing. So we introduced a number of subtle interventions to facilitate that.
So the first thing is the train has wider doors, so that really helps. Then you can see there are graphic indicators, for example, on the floor, that suggest that you should walk inside the train, not stop in the door. And of course, if the train is really full, you have nowhere to go. But still having this very obvious graphic, it sort of sends a message to your subconscious that sort of gets ingrained in your mind that this is really a place you should not stand, you should move into the car. You can also see that we've increased the room available for people who are in a wheelchair. And also very importantly, we made it a lot more obvious than before. Before we had sort of a sticker, and a sticker is easy to ignore. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people who are not very considerate, and even though they know this is reserved for people with special needs, they will still hog these seats. But by making it very obvious and having the seats also color-coded in yellow, it really sends a message. And if somebody sits down there and somebody else comes with a wheelchair for whom this space is really, they have priority for that space, if somebody doesn't get up, it sort of makes it very obvious that they are doing something wrong, and we try to introduce a little bit of public shaming, because if you sit there, everybody knows you're not supposed to sit there.
So we'll see. Everything we do, not just us, but everything done in public space is a bit of an experiment. So we have to see how it works. But
the other thing you see is that the stanchions, grab bars, seat ends are all yellow, and that's actually not how it was finally implemented. The Transit Authority was going back and forth. One good thing about the yellow color is that it is a lot better to see for visually impaired people.
90% of the sort of legally visually impaired, legally blind, they still have a certain vision, but high contrast is helpful for them.
But the problem we have in New York, and actually the MTA did made trains where they tested powder coating, existing trains where they tested the yellow powder coat. But unfortunately, in some trains it was so vandalized, and then it's
just scratched off.
Yeah, it looks really, really bad when people start scratching. And when something looks sort of vandalized, then that becomes an invitation to vandalize even more. And so in the end, the Transit Authority decided to go back to leaving the grab rails in stainless steel, which has a lot of other advantages too, but it has obviously a bit less visibility. The other thing is we have the green lights or lights on the doors. They're green when before the train pulls into a station, so you know which side the door will open. And also once the door is open, as long as it's green, you can go in and out. But then once they're ready to close the door, it switches to red to signal you that you should stand behind and no longer try to enter the train or hold up the train in the station. And then again, all the sort of color choices and treatments are always made to minimize the visibility of the dirt, because dirt is there, and there's also a lot of steel dust in the subway system.
So the floor has a dark color with speckles. That is to conceal the dust, the dirt, and the chewing gums people spit on the floor.
The other thing this new train has is also a fully digital, full color map, which can change what it shows depending on where it is. So during the ride it will show you the strip map, but then before you head into a station it switches to the different display that tells you detailed information about the upcoming station, and also it tells you all your connection opportunities and related to the platform where you will arrive and related to your current position. And that's again something that's really helpful in terms of speeding up getting on and off the train, because before the train even stops, you know where you have to go if you have to make a connection or if you're looking for the elevator. You know that, and once the doors open, you can immediately be on your way. Whereas what happens often is that the door opens and people step out and stop right in front of the door, and then they look to orientate themselves and figure out where in the space they have to go, and then they block everybody behind them. And we thought that will be interesting for you too. This is actually the making of the mock-up, the full-scale mock-up. It was built all in plywood and MDF and in a woodworking shop. And the final thing looked like the real thing, and when people were sitting down during the user research.
Left as a whole laser cut and assembled. Just finished with real materials, so it does look like real thing, but it's a very handicrafted thing.
And then this is a picture of
That's a real
first
thing.
real car. And as I said, the first series started running last year, and then there are actually two types of this train. One with the traditional multiple cars connected via just rail connection, but then we have also a series of trains that have open gangways, so they have this accordion connection, and those started, a few of them started running this spring. And as I mentioned, over the years, each time we did a new fleet of cars for New York City, we were able to make certain changes and improvements. And so
sometimes successful, sometimes not successful.
So this was something that you will not see in the latest train, because this is a grab bar on the ceiling, a looped grab bar on the ceiling, and we figured this is a good thing to do because it creates more handholds for people. But then, as Masamichi said, if you put something out in public space, it's always a bit of an experiment, a social experiment. And what happened? This became super popular with the Showtime guys. So
the first train we designed had just one rail, and then the second fleet we designed was physically 1 foot wider. So we thought, well, maybe you can run the two rails that can provide more holding positions. But then, it invited different activities.
And they were really happy because it allowed them to do a lot more moves. These guys are amazing, it's super acrobatic. And
it's quite entertaining.
Yeah, and impressive, but at the same time, it's also dangerous. Yeah, so if the train sometimes makes very sudden movements and they could just fall onto a passenger.
Accidentally, they can kick someone's face.
Yeah. So it's too dangerous. So we should not design something that allows them to do that.
So the latest car, even though it's wider, it has just one. After that, after a few trains we designed for New York City, we were invited to design this new Washington DC subway car. That's the exterior, that's the interior. There are some similarities. Has a dark floor still to conceal the dirt, and then has a lighter wall and ceiling to create illusion of a wider, bigger space. But you can see also difference. Like glass screen, which we couldn't do in New York City, but Washington DC, they don't have that Scratchity program, so we were able to do that. And also
we have upholstered seats.
Upholstered seats, it's unthinkable in New York City. But
it would not survive a week. Somebody would come with a knife and just slice it open.
But so that's kind of an interesting thing. Even though the physical design requirement is very much similar between New York City and Washington DC, but people behave differently. So that generates different type of design requirement.
And again, as Masamichi said, intervention is always a social experiment in public space. This is what's called the Link NYC. It's a equipment that is designed to replace the payphones, because nowadays nobody needs a public payphone anymore. So this is providing free high-speed internet access as well as you can make phone calls, you can make video calls, you can recharge your phone.
And the most important thing is still it's an emergency access point.
And it has a small screen where you can access local information and the city-specific information. And in terms of the design, or rather the system has two large advertising
Right.
screens on the
Yeah.
sides.
Why advertisement screens?
Because the advertisement screens are intended to finance the whole project. So with the advertising money, they can pay for providing this service to the city. But we also knew that people are sensitive to too much advertising. So we really tried to shift a little bit the perception of this object so that people don't see it primarily as an advertising object, but as an amenity, as a public amenity. And so we made sort of a subtle twist to the design, which is basically like a monolith, but then one side is sort of cut off, and that gives it a directionality and actually defines the narrow side as the front side, because that is the side for the public, where they have their amenities. So it really has, the face is what gives it what signals its main purpose for the audience. But then what happened is, and I should step back. So one big promise about this project was that it should close the digital divide, because there are a lot of people who do not have internet access or high-speed internet access, and this should bring access to everybody. If you live near such a link, you can actually get the internet access in your home.
I mean, Wi-Fi access.
Yeah. And it turned out that it did its job actually too well, in a way, because what happened, well, who doesn't have internet access, for example, are homeless people. And so for them, this was a great, or is a great amenity. And so they started congregating around the links. They would pull up chairs, they would pull up, sometimes we saw a sofa even next to it, and they would sit there. And initially the small screen had unrestricted internet access. So you could browse to any sites, and you can watch videos, you can listen to music, as this guy has been doing. And so people ended up hogging the sidewalk area. And a lot of people who either lived in front of a link or had a business in front of the link got very upset because they didn't like this congregation. But you have to admit that is exactly what it kind of was made for. And so it's sort of a conflict that became only obvious once it was implemented. Long story short, once people were seen watching pornographic movies, the city basically shut down the unrestricted internet and just limited it to sort of very city-specific information. And but you still have a lot of people hanging around and charging. It's extremely popular for charging phones and still for making calls and finding out city-specific information. But then some people also found other things to do with the links, such as these Teletubby dress-ups. I don't know if you guys still know Teletubby. But, so that was also sort of funny to see how, again, you put something out in public space and people respond to it in different ways.
In addition to making practical things for public space, we had a few occasions to do something a bit funnier. We were invited to design something for empty show windows of Bloomingdale's in New York City, department store on Lexington Avenue. They have sort of a low season right after the Christmas high season, so they gave up their windows for a month, and we set up this sort of interactive installation to activate the sidewalk.
So basically, as you walk by, you turn on a neon flower, which then fades out over time, and you also trigger sound. So as you keep on walking, you play back a little melody, and also you leave this fading trail of light behind. And it really transformed this city block, this is between 59th and 60th Street, for the duration of this exhibition or installation. And it was also interesting, as you can see, sometimes people were so oblivious that they didn't pay attention to the fact that they are actually turning on these lights with their presence. Sometimes people think it's a touch screen and they would hit the glass. But in any case, it was very entertaining to just stand there and watch people. And of course, the people who were most fascinated by this were kids who started running back and forth and actually thinking that the system was much smarter than it is or was.
So some of them started dancing in front of the flower.
So, yeah, it was really sort of, again, interesting to see how this could transform a space temporarily. And then we also started thinking, what can we do to sort of foster more social interaction, specifically in the museum context? And this was a project where we were invited to design to do the exhibition design for a video and in an art exhibition around videos that dealt with the topic of performance and surveillance. And we were asked to do the exhibition design, but we were also commissioned to do a special piece for this. And the inspiration came from this notion of dogs and dog owners and how the dogs actually work as a catalyst for social interaction. If you go out with your dog will make contact with another person's dog, and that very often leads to those two people making contact because of their dogs. And sometimes that's even the main reason why people get a dog, that they want to meet other people. And sometimes it's sort of the opposite. You have to talk to maybe your neighbor whom you don't like, but because of your dog's socializing, you have to socialize with them too. So we basically made a setup where we provided 4 stools that people could sit down, because we thought, well, this is an art video exhibition, and sometimes that can be a little bit lengthy and tiring, so it's good to provide people with a place to sit down. But these stools, they all had a camera embedded. And once you sat down, the camera actually would be triggered and it would take pictures. But the pictures, they are not very nice, they're not very flattering.
Shooting from a
Angle. And these pictures, they will crowd around your stool until another person sits down on another stool, and then the pictures are going to be in contact. And they will have different behaviors. Sometimes they will be shy, sometimes they will like each other and dance, sometimes they will not like each other and they will play. So you never know what your image is going to do with another person's image. And that can be a little bit embarrassing. So it also acts as an icebreaker when you feel like you need to say something to the other person. In this exhibition. Kids are the most up for this installation. But also we felt this was really sort of a nice way to get people to talk with each other and see more exhibitions.
We've been designing office furniture for quite some time now for the company Nor. That's one of the great American corporation, pioneer of modern design. Vignelli, Vignelli, they did super work for Nor. We are quite inspired by what they have done before as well. So collaboration started back in 2007 or so. we were asked to design the system furniture for the office. And then we saw then the office space is not necessarily traditional public space, but it's kind of public space because you don't, as the end user, you don't own that space. You are surrounded by the environment created by someone else for you to occupy, unlike your home where you orchestrate your environment.
Also, especially in large corporations, there are many people working in the same company, but you don't necessarily know them, or you know them perhaps from seeing. But so they are sort of almost strangers around you.
So then we thought maybe it's great to take advantage of this opportunity to make sort of an interactive furniture, or furniture as an interaction piece. The system consists of desks and storage units, but unlike the residential furniture, systems furniture is not a single object or discrete, complete object. It's basically the collection of kits and parts and the rules to organize them. So many small things come together to create different setups. So it can be configured in many different ways to serve different functions for different parts of the office.
And one thing that we, when we started out on this project, we went around to different offices and observed how people are working. And we often noticed that people who are working in an open bench setup.
That was a transitional time in American corporations. They are moving from sort of cubicle-centric office planning to more open floor planning. Now, cubicle, you know, from Dilbert's and other things, it's this little shed that you occupy and you do whatever you want. But it's not quite encouraging sort of interaction amongst the people working there. So many companies are intrigued to move to more open floor plan, but it comes with sort of a negative side effect.
Yeah, so what we observed is that many times people who were working on an open desk had rear view mirrors. Because in an open desk you don't have physical boundaries, and people feel like somebody else can just walk up to them and they won't even notice, and they won't even know, so they have a mirror. So we thought, well, how can we instill a sense of territory, because that's really what people were complaining about, that they felt a loss of sense of ownership and territory of their space, which they had very clearly defined in a cubicle. And so we thought, well, we want to keep the openness of open desking, but we want to introduce some elements that suggest boundaries without having really a physical boundary. And so one element we came up with, you see these brown L's, these are actually cabinets. And what they do is they create a corner, and each corner is sort of delineating an area that is the personal area. And then everything outside of this L, that's sort of where the public corridors are. And the cabinets are about 42-inch high, so they are also at a height where they are very convenient for sort of leaning on, and
49-inch actually.
Or 49, and you can knock on the cabinet to announce yourself. So it introduces a certain etiquette how to deal in this space that doesn't have physical boundaries. And so you announce yourself, and then the person sitting on the desk can turn around and can invite you in or welcome you.
So here you can see, no, of course it's not purely symbolic object, it's a storage unit. you put your clothes in or whatever you have, and it works as a bookshelf as well.
Another example is this reception desk, where a reception desk, you want to be very inviting to the people that come to you. So we have this large screen with a very friendly curve, and we also have a cabinet that has a display area for the people who come up. But for the person sitting behind the desk, this screen actually works sort of like a protective shield, because if you sit on a reception desk, you also don't want people to kind of come too close to you. You want that there is a certain distance kept and that you have certain privacy. And again, that same cabinet, on the other end, it's your personal cabinet. So you're sort of mediating what is public and what is private, and making sure that everybody has sort of a good comfort zone.
That's a kind of curious object, and it's a hybrid of a chair and a tablet. It was designed for what's called in-between space, in between your personal workspace and more formal meeting space. We design it in such a way that people can use this object in a very flexible, unprescriptive manner.
So you can either sit by yourself in various positions. You can use the higher element as a backrest, or as a little writing surface, or as an armrest. But also the scale of this object is such that you can easily pull 2 or 3 or 4 of them together and have an impromptu meeting, sitting in the way you feel most comfortable.
Stylistically, it looks sort of like old school chair, and that was by intention. We wanted to kind of energize older people, bring back memory a little bit. But at the same time, this chair-desk hybrid was inspired by how people started working with new digital devices, like pad and phones. So this small tablet works perfectly for these new devices.
And then, lastly, we'd like to talk about this lamp called Sparrow. It's a task light, and it's actually in the Vignelli
Special collections.
special collection. Yes. So here we really wanted to focus on the light and how
It's a task light for your desk.
and how to interact with the light. And often you see task lights with complex mechanisms to bring them into different positions. But
And
we've-
also large base to allow that flexible movement. But the desk space is fairly limited, and we wanted to really minimize the footprint at the same time, letting the focal point to the light itself as opposed to the contraption. So we came up with this arrangement that has a very small footprint base. It's heavy.
But you can grab the base and just very quickly reposition it, because what we also realized is very often when you sit in front of the computer, the lighting needs are different whether you're looking at the screen or whether you're looking at a piece of paper in front of your screen. And for people who, like designers, who use both screen and paper, you have to shift your light source quite a bit.
It's very minimalistic because this physical frame that supports the head is actually conductive, so there's no extra wire to house.
And also the head where it has also the controller, and we really made sure that we have a controller where you can very intentionally switch between the different dimming levels, because we discovered a lot of dimmers are very hard to control. You either make it too bright, or you have to do it always twice because you overshoot. So here we have discrete steps, and also the head has a handle, which is really an invitation to interact with it. Come to different finishes, and that's it for today.
we have time for some questions. Anybody in the audience have any questions for Sigi and Masamichi in the front?
So, was it pretty early in your guys' career when you got that initial train opportunity with the subway?
Yes.
How did you make the jump into train design? Like, what was it like getting into something so technical without too much prior experience?
It was, how to say, wasn't easy, but learning really, learning quickly what needs to be incorporated, what's missing from the existing trains, and what's reasonably possible here. So yeah, talking to the MTA, the transit agency, different department, the operators, I mean the drivers, people who cleans the car, who swaps advertisement, who makes operation plan, scheduling, as well as the executives and the engineers.
And also, it's not that you start from a blank with a blank sheet of paper. You really, I mean, there's like already a technical specification book that we obviously don't understand everything in it, but there are certain aspects that we have to follow from these technical specifications. So there are a lot of givens already and a lot of constraints in this type of design.
Thank you.
No?
Question I had for you is specifically regarding the subway system, the machines and everything. You designed them in a way that really fit into New York City as a culture, as a society, as a microcosm of the US. Do you think it's more important to design for the city as it is or as you would like it to become?
I think it's always a little bit of both. You have to understand the context and you have to be realistic about the context, but at the same time you want to move things into a better direction, and so you want to be somewhat aspirational as well, and so you have to sort of find the balance.
Thank you.
Let's go over here first. Jaden?
So, you two have been working together for a long time, and that made me wonder what makes for a good partnership and working relationship.
You learn to work together. It wasn't that easy in the beginning. We had a lot of fights, a lot
Yeah.
of I'm right, no, I'm right, but eventually.
On necessity and the urgency and the priority of surviving. That was that makes things quite obvious what needs to be done. And
But
so-
yeah, but I think we also learned in a way to, or we developed a little bit a design relationship where we can toss out things that are somewhat half-baked to the other person, and the other person looks at it and tosses it back. So it's a little bit also like a I don't know, ping pong game or so. We don't, and we can also, you know, if one person sees that what the other person is doing doesn't go anywhere, it's good sometimes when certain things that are not good ideas get thrown out early on. And so having this constant back and forth is really helpful. But again, it was not something that we figured out on day one.
many dishes were broken.
There was a question over here.
Oh, I did. Thank you so much. It's fascinating. Your work is amazing. On that design of that subway car, the top is kind of rounded.
Yes.
And I've been reading about, you must know much more about this than I do, about these kids that are subway surfing.
So,
Have you had to do anything to prevent, I don't know how they could get up there anyway with it rounded, but maybe it's the older cars they're on.
Well, they are all rounded. Astonishingly, there's no kind of comprehensive data of the entire tunnel. So as long as the new fleet fits in the envelope of what's running right now, it will not hit anything. So that overall kind of silhouette has been kept like that. But the answer to your question about SAFA, it's a relatively new thing, and we haven't been asked to specifically address that problem. I'm a little bit, how to say, astonished by these young people who dare to do something like that. But
I think it has a little bit to do with the fact that they can put something up online that can be seen by anybody all over the world. And so people are trying to outdo each other in terms of what they are daring to do. And I actually just read about, so I'm originally from Austria, and I just read about a subway surfer having been seriously injured in Austria last week. So it's spreading also because people see this, they get inspired, and they want to do it too. And
Do you have cameras inside the cars?
yes.
yes,
Oh,
yeah. The observation is one thing, but the how to use it and how to, let's say, enforce the rule, that's the tricky part, actually trickier than collecting the images. They do have a new initiative to influence younger people through the social media. That is a kind of interesting, indirect way, and probably, in a way, more direct in order to address the subway surfer issues.
thank you.
Let's go straight back here with the red checkers, yeah.
You deal with a lot of technical specifications in your projects. How do you find ways to be creative with all those constraints?
Let's see, we don't really develop technical spec. We work with engineers and sort of work together. But sort of creativity without constraint is really hard to imagine as well. Probably it's let's say, designing something for ourselves without constraint, that would be the hardest project, or that would be the project from the hell. Example, we are going through the home renovation project right now, and it's just for ourselves, and we are the client. And that's really difficult to make decisions, because we can just noodle all day.
And we can change our opinion all the time. So constraints are actually helpful. Of course, sometimes you feel like your hands are tied, but then you always find somewhere something, and maybe the difference you can make is not great, but it is. But you are making a difference, and it can be felt on a certain level, and that's still worth it.
In a way, actually, because of the constraint, the creative solution occurs. Without the challenge, you just stay where you are. So new issues necessitate the sort of creative solution.
Thank you.
This one there towards the back, yeah.
Might be kind of similar to questions that have already been asked, but I guess having worked on many iterations of the New York subway system and the train cars that they implement, I guess how do you find ways to continue to approach a similar problem creatively when it's, I guess, something that you've had experience with before, and like, how do you kind of see it with fresh eyes?
You mean, for example, designing multiple things for New York City, or designing trains for another city and having?
I guess more specifically, like designing multiple iterations
For
of
New York.
the
Right,
rail
yeah,
system.
but if things stay as is, then we don't need to do much new things. But certain issues, the new issues emerge, and then requires sort of the counterpoint solution for that. So that's been sort of the driver for these iterations. Or certain things becomes possible, which wasn't possible before. For example, the large screen for the subway car that wasn't available. It was too expensive, it was too unstable, but now it's available, so what can we do with that? So the social change and technical change that bring sort of new opportunities and challenges to be attacked again.
So when you're given these tasks at such a massive scale, what are your like initial steps, and how do you pare it down to make it seem more manageable?
I mean, the first thing is always to try to immerse ourselves in that environment for which we are designing. So, I mean, New York we knew already fairly well because we had been living there for quite some time, but if we do a project for another city, we go there, we write the system, we observe people, and just sort of get a feel for the context, because the context is really, again, something that gives us inspiration of where we can start or where we can put a stake in the ground and then work from there.
The people, the particular people who use whatever we are designing, that's very much the target that we try to understand and respond.
And yeah, very often it is about sort of collecting these impressions, and of course we get information from our clients too, and then trying to synthesize this and come up with some sort of first hypothesis. And we don't know if we are right or not, but externalizing something so that it then can be shared and we can get feedback on, then that helps us, even if maybe the first iteration is not quite there, but to sort of synthesize the impressions and make them communicable so we can talk about it is really important.
Roger?
I'm interested in your lamp. Are they available on the market? What are they called, and how much are they cost?
Oh yes.
$264 for the version with the base. I mean, something like that.
Yeah, from Nord online.
You can order it from Nord or from some other online stores carry it, and
It's called the Sparrow.
And yeah, the reason it's called Sparrow is
I forgot to mention.
Inspired by a bird sitting on a wire.
Well, let's do this one, the reddish shirt or coat. Yeah.
Hi, I'm currently studying hostile architecture.
Okay.
And after seeing how the public has responded to your designs and there's still being some undesirable behaviors, how have you avoided hostile design while still implementing those safety precautions?
I have to say, I think that the term hostile design is a little bit also complicated, or because it always depends on your on which side you're on. So, for example, I know that some people get very upset about benches that have features that discourage laying down or that discourage skateboarding. But then when you look and see that these benches have become unusable for certain people because somebody is either always sleeping there or is using it as skateboarding ramp, then you can see there are different audiences or different people, and so you can't necessarily say that if you try to make it usable for one group that that's automatically hostile design.
For example, so the bench example, why do we need the benches in the sidewalk and the park? The main reason is it helps people to go out, knowing there are places you can rest. So it's very important for especially the elderlies or weaker people, knowing confidently that you can take rest as you take a walk. So making the benches available for these population is very important. And if these are taken by different activities, that becomes a little bit tricky. Okay, it's fine to negotiate and share the bench, but it becomes, how to say, unusable by primary target users. Then we have to do something.
And that doesn't automatically mean it's hostile. It's just trying to preserve the usability of an object for the intended audience. So, but I'm digressing. That was not necessarily your question, but it's just something that I feel like it's kind of a not so clear-cut item. But in our work, I mean, we try to basically not present opportunities to people to abuse. But we cannot completely control that or prevent that.
I have a question for you. You've lived and worked in New York City for quite some time, just as the Vignellis did. And I wonder, in your opinion, what is the Vignelli legacy that they've left for designers to follow, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, I think they've done a fantastic job with the subway system graphics. It's, even though many times the standards are a little bit ignored in the implementation by the various shops that make signs and so on, it's a very clear, navigable visual identity system or information system, and I think that's something that we all can learn from.
I think not just functional in sort of immediate wayfinding function. So having cohesive graphical identity throughout the system gives sort of how can I say, the sense of order in the public space. People feel more confident that the space is well maintained, well kept. So that sense of visual, sense of order through the visual design that the Masio and later and Nudra brought in, that was a massive change from a previous generation of subway environment.
Glued together the disparate elements, because the New York City subway system was never conceived as with one overarching master plan. These were competing companies that ran different train lines, and only at one point became one company under the MTA umbrella. So there was nothing cohesive about it, and I think that Vignelli's system, graphic system, really helped. Even when there today is still many sort of gaps and there's a lot of messiness about it, that really strong information graphics, holds everything together. And it's so iconic. I mean, how many souvenir products are there that feature the subway graphics?
Sure. Thank you. Joyce?
I want to go back to the conversation about hostile design, and I don't think it's, I'm not speaking about hostility, but I was kind of comparing what you were talking about in the benches with the outcome of what happened with the towers that were accessible for internet and other things, and the fact that homeless people basically camped out by those surfaces. And in designing things for a city like New York, when you are given a charge are you given a specific charge of who you are to design for, and that's what you think about, and at any point is any administration actually saying, you know, we know that this happened, so while you design things for the elderly so they have a place to sit down, can you also design a separate system that allows the homeless a place to lay down, or, you know, start to use things for a separate function so that the two maintain a separate identity?
Also, it becomes, I can imagine, controversial too. That can be seen as a new type of segregation, and but designing something specific to certain, specific populations, that's one way to go. It's tough within the limited space and the limited budget and the resources. So it's ongoing thing, and I'm sorry I can give you, I'm giving you the muddy answer.
Yeah.
Let's take one more question over here.
So your designs go a lot on how the brain works and how it will perceive your design, such as the ladder in the subway system or the children's desk going off of the chair. How did you start that process in figuring out how the brain will really perceive your designs and their initial kind of interactions with them?
We don't know exactly. So we just do observations. I think it's good to start without preconceptions and try to observe things you are trying to work on, and then imagine what's going on, and then we just need to come up with reasonable hypotheses, and then test it, see if it works or not. You mentioned earlier, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and then we change the direction. But the basic mechanism of taking advantage of what's in the people's head already, that is how things go. So we just need to find out what's the right thing to latch on to. But that's
just is easy to say, of course. But yeah, I think it's really important for us all as designers to be curious about other people, because everybody behaves somewhat differently, or everybody has a bit different conception of the world, and so just listening to people and observing them and noticing what they do helps you maybe uncover a little bit the things that you have to pay attention to, or that you can, knowing that people may do this or that, design specifically for it.
And that keeps us kind of interested as well. It's sort of like anthropology. You just observe people as kind of curious subject.
Well, I think that's a great way to end our conversation tonight. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. This was the last lecture of our series this year, but stay tuned for the exciting lectures to come when you come back in spring semester. Everyone have a great night. Thank you again.